Today we'll be talking about Abby Choi, a 28-year-old socialite who vanished on February 21st of 2023. Police investigated and potentially put together a gruesome case. This case is pretty wild, I'm not going to lie. It involves a really evil family and the dismemberment of one of their loved ones. We have a lot to talk about and unpack today, so let's get into it. Abby Choi lived in Hong Kong, which for those of you who may not know is a city in China, with a population of 7.4 million. It is also well known for being a very large tourist-driven area and is very focused around money. I personally have not had the opportunity to go to Hong Kong yet, but I have heard amazing things about this city. When doing the research for this case, it gave me the impression that Hong Kong is a very vibrant and a very safe place to live. Abby was the eldest of 4 daughters and she came from a very successful family, and her family owned a very successful construction and mining business in China, which in return funded a very comfortable life with a lot of wealth. Abby's personal net worth at the time of her death was estimated to be Hong Kong $100 million. Abby also engaged in philanthropy by co-founding Payom's charitable organization, a group dedicated to help stray animals. But despite Abby coming from a very wealthy background, she was actually known by others for being very humble, hardworking, and a pleasure to be around. Abby had a large social media following and she was really becoming a sought after trendsetter. She had a special eye for the finer things and especially fashion, and as you can see, she was a timelessly beautiful human being. She also regularly attended the Paris Fashion Week and had been featured on several magazines including Elle, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and looks to have been invited to some pretty lucrative events along the way, especially in the fashion industry. In her final post on Instagram before her disappearance, she posted an Instagram picture where she featured on the cover of French magazine L'Officiel. I'm not sure if I'm butchering the pronunciation of that. Look how stunning she is. She is just she's beautiful. She really is. As I mentioned earlier, this case is brutal. It is one of the most brutal cases I've ever heard of. So it will be mentioning a lot of dismemberment and dissolving of bodily parts. If you're a bit squeamy at the thought of this is probably the best time for you to click off this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. To the outside world, it would appear that Abby didn't grow up with many struggles or troubles. Abby and her family had everything you could ever want, plus more. Despite being a well-known socialite and having a celebrity status, Abby was described as one of the most kindest and down-to-earth people by all who were lucky enough to cross paths with her, and was said to be such an attentive and loving mother towards her children. In 2012, when Abby was 18, she married Alex Kwong, who also at the time was 18. They were high school sweethearts and they had known each other since middle school. It has been said that Abby's friends and parents were worried. Alex and his family weren't on the same level of wealth as Abby's family were, which meant that she would be marrying beneath her financial class, which I believe can come down to a cultural belief when you are marrying into other families. Together, Alex and Abby went on to have 2 children who were 8 and 10 at the time that she went missing. However, after a few years together, Alex and Abby decided to split amicably and they parted ways in 2016. Despite the divorce, Alex and Abby actually remained really good friends. Some even said that they remained quite close, and it wasn't just with Alex, it was actually with his family as well. And you know, you might think that perhaps she was doing that for the relationship between, you know, the children and her and Alex. You know, sometimes divorce can be really tough on families and it can really break families. But it's said that no, she actually genuinely just cherished her friendship with Alex and his family enough to just not make it weird, I guess. The other members of Alex's family were his mother, Jenny Lee, his father, Kwong, and his brother, his eldest brother, Anthony. As I mentioned before, it is important to note that she wasn't just putting on a brave face for the kids. It actually turned out that it was a lot deeper than just a friendship. Abby was actually funding the family. She was funding everything. She was funding their lifestyles, she was paying for all of the trips. She was paying for really like anything they needed by the sounds of it. And she even hired her ex-brother-in-law, Anthony, who was Alex's older brother. She actually hired him to be her personal driver or personal chauffeur. And he went on to be really good in that position. There was no complaints. There was really nothing more to it other than she wanted to help Anthony and was able to provide him a well-paid job. Now, it's said that Anthony and Abby were actually quite good friends. Now, as you can see, Anthony even uploaded a picture to his Instagram with a hashtag #sis, along with him smiling in a picture with Abby. Now, the next part, I mean, it just goes to show how giving Abby really is. And if you haven't gotten that feeling already from hearing what I've explained, you will definitely understand it in the next part that I'm about to tell you. Now, this had to come from the kindness of her heart to do this, but in 2019, she actually purchased the family a $9 million home. It said that she used this purchase and actually purchased the house in her ex-father-in-law's name, Mr. Kwong. This reportedly was her idea, and it was a way of her to save money on stamp duty, which makes sense to me. Not long after that, Abby handed the keys over to the Kwon family, and this wasn't just a house for Alex, Anthony, Jenny Lee and Kwang. This was actually for her children as well, so they all lived together so they could be as close as possible. And you know, I mean, how ideal, right? Getting given a house, they didn't have to pay rent. I'm assuming they didn't really have to pay for anything. If there was any issues with the house, I don't even know if they bought their own groceries. I mean, their whole life was funded by Abby, their ex-daughter-in-law. When I was doing my research as well, you know, it's said that Hong Kong isn't exactly the most cheapest place to live. So in the economy that they have, you know, they were so lucky that Abby was gifting them with this lifestyle. And you know, I'm sure that they appreciated it. At least that's what a normal person would do, right? They would appreciate the favors that someone is providing them, especially when it's a $9 million house. Now, the Kwan family have gone from barely scraping by, like they were not really well off. They weren't a well-off family, and now they've got literally everything that they could ever ask for plus more, and they were getting this off Abby from the age of 18. Like, I'm speechless. Now, remembering what I spoke about before, Alex met Abby, they separated, and they separated in 2016. Not long after, also in 2016, Abby went on to meet Chris Tham. Chris and his family are actually part of the biggest noodle franchise in Hong Kong. He came from a family of a very well-known restaurant mogul. Now, going off the previous marriage, you know, Alex wasn't well off. Chris is well off, he comes from money, so they were better suited as a pair when it came to the opinions of others. But despite that, they actually were so happy. Abby and Chris went on to get married the same year in 2016. They must have been just so in love and so smitten with each other that it really didn't take long for them to know that they were just soulmates. They were meant to be, and they were just so happy. From what I've read, you know, Chris absolutely adored Abby and she adored Chris. Even though they did have a full-on wedding, they weren't actually legally married. Chris and Abby went on to have 2 more children, and it is worth saying that Chris took in her 2 other children from her marriage with Alex like they were his own. It was a really good blended family. It was said that there was a lot of love between everyone, especially Chris and Abby, and they just had such a good, happy life. She got along with Chris's parents, her in-laws, and everything in life was just working out for Abby. She was just thriving in every part of her life. Now, a bit of a twist in the dynamic between 2 families. So we have the Kwans and we have the Thams, and it turns out everyone kind of knows each other, which is, you know, I guess small world, things like this can happen. But they were close in the sense that the Thams would invite the Kwans over for Christmas, they would go on holidays together, they would go on day trips together. And Alex and Chris were reportedly really good friends. Now, I personally can't imagine anything stranger than my husband and my ex hanging out, but I would say that this is just down to the fact that they both share kids with each other now, and it's a little bit of a blended family. And to be honest with you, good on them. I think that's amazing. I feel like families these days don't really do that, so it's more of like a rare shock when you hear that families all get along. So good on them, honestly. Now, I don't want to speculate too much on the family dynamic because it's not really set in stone to say how the families met, but I'm assuming they may have known each other from a few decades prior. Maybe the dads knew each other, or maybe they worked on, you know, similar things together. Maybe they crossed paths in the industry. I'm not really sure. All we know is that Abby had a relationship with all 4 of her children. She was close with all of them, and even if they didn't all live together, because Alex obviously had custody of the other 2 kids as well, you know, she would always invite them over. She would always go out with them. She would take them places like Disneyland, and she was just a really, really involved mum. Abby was really, really involved with her kids. So it's February 21st and Abby hasn't picked up the kids from school. This wasn't like Abby, and she was known for being really respectful, and her family, especially her kids, always came first. She didn't give any notice that she wasn't able to do pickup, so it was really out of character for her. Her husband, Chris, was naturally very worried about her. He was like, she hasn't picked up the kids. This is so not like Abby. Like, what's going on? He tried calling her, but he had no luck. He asked friends and family if anyone had seen Abby, but no one knew where she was. No one had heard from her. So eventually he was so worried. He hadn't heard from her. No one had heard from her. So he went to the police station and he filed a missing persons report, as it just wasn't like Abby for her to just not be there. No one had heard from her. Now, Alex, her ex-husband, apparently blew up at Abby's family, and it was because they didn't tell him that they were going to be filing a missing persons report, which is so strange and such a red flag. Like, what are you talking about? The mother of your children is missing. She's gone. No one has heard from her. She hasn't made contact. You should be so worried about her, and you should be doing anything in your power to be able to help get a hold of Abby. Where is she? What do you mean, don't file a police report? What? Now, the police have commenced a search, which is normal practice in this type of scenario. Abby was classified as missing, and police were beginning to question Abby's family and friends. Now, this is when the police had discovered that Alex had tried to stop her family from filing a missing persons report. But not just that, the Kwon brothers, Alex and Anthony, were not wanting to cooperate with the police. What? I know. Like, sorry? What do you mean? Mother of your children is missing. Now, the Kwon brothers were not wanting to help. They didn't want to cooperate. They were making up lies. They were throwing smoke screens to try and deter the search for Abby. And as you can imagine, the police really, like, they noticed that, and they saw that as a red flag, and they were worried. And as you can imagine, this made the police suspicious. What else are they hiding? What do they know? Why do they not want to talk to us? Why are they throwing smoke screens our way? Why? With police now looking into the Kwon family, it turns out that they're not so squeaky clean. What an absolute shock. Like, I didn't see this coming at all. Now, fun fact for you all, Alex has been wanted by the police since 2015. And that was because he had charges of theft towards him, but jumped bail, and he was an alleged scammer, where it was his master plan to go on dating websites and scam innocent men out of their own money with fake investment schemes in gold. Now, this wasn't just a few $100s, this was thousands of dollars. He took a lot from these men. Now, his older brother, Anthony, had a history of being sued by banks, and this was for unpaid debts in 2019. And as for the wonderful parents of these golden children, Jenny Lee filed for bankruptcy in 2017, and Kwong, who is actually a former police officer, was accused of rape. Now, the backstory to this is a lady, a victim, went into the police station where Kwong was working, and she went into his department as a victim of a crime. so that she was able to file a case. Now, it's said that Officer Kwong comforted her, he supported her, and listened to her through the process of her reliving what had just happened. After hearing what had happened, he had made promises to the victim and said that he was going to find the person that did this to her and get her justice. But then one day, it was 2 a.m. and Officer Kwong knocked on the victim's door. Now, she didn't really think this was too odd because she had an open case, she knew the officer, and she thought maybe there was an urgent break in the case and he needed to update her and speak to her. She didn't really put two and two together, and to be fair, I feel like most of us probably wouldn't either. So because she thought that he was potentially, you know, providing an update to the case or needed to just talk to her further, she let him inside. Now, this is the moment that he apparently attacked her in a very sexual manner. This guy is a police officer. He's in the community and the community are supposed to trust him. And he goes and instills more trauma on this poor girl. He is vile. This whole family just sounds vile. After he had been accused of alleged in 2015, he was asked to stand down from his role as a police officer and he had to resign. Now, judging off what I know about this human already when researching this case, I feel like his ego would have been very hurt and he wouldn't have liked the fact that he had to be stood down from being a police officer. And I can't really see him holding any jobs since 2015 when he was stood down. To be honest with you, he probably didn't need to work because Abby funded his lifestyle from 2018. Now, you may be wondering, okay, this family is like weird, like maybe they actually do have an involvement in this case. Maybe they did actually have reason to hurt Abby. Maybe they do know more. And this brings us to November 2021. Now, you can remember the apartment that she purchased in Kwong's name, the $9 million one. Well, she was wanting to sell it, and even though it wasn't under her name, she actually was able to. She got legal advice and they were like, yep, that's fine, you know, even though it is under his name, if you can prove that you purchased this house, well, that's fine. No work needed here, you can sell it, that's all good. So Abby actually went to speak to the Kwong family about this, and she had a chat with them, was explaining, you know, what she was doing, and she even offered to purchase them another home fully in cash. They didn't have to do anything, they didn't have to pay rent. She just needed to sell the house that they were currently in and she would simply move them to somewhere else. However, you can probably guess from going off their characters already, they went off. A fight broke out between Abby and the Kwongs. Now, allegedly, Mr. Kwon, Daddy Kwon if you will, was not happy and allegedly told Abby, if you dare sell this property, I will kill you. Yikes, what a normal response to have. Like, it's her house, dude, she paid for it. Now, her reasoning for wanting to sell the property, not that she needs one, she can do what she wants. It was apparently a strategic move for her housing portfolio. Now, there was some online chatter about this potentially being a strategic move for Abby to cut the cord a little bit. And to be honest, that does make sense to me. Abby is a very caring, nurturing, and she wants to give type of person. And even though she would be buying them another home, it's not a big purchase like the home that she was trying to sell. So I think it was rumored that she was going to spend about $2 or $3 million on the new home, which, I mean, if anyone wants to buy me a house for that, please be my guest. But I do think, and I do agree, that potentially this was a way of Abby saying, you know what, like, I'm going to do what I want to do with my money. I'm still, you know, I still want to help you out, but you need to, like, not take. You need to give a little bit. So I'm asking you, I understand it's not ideal. I'm asking you, you know, you need to move, I need to sell this house, and I'm going to put you into another one. Don't stress. And to be honest, I think that is probably accurate. She was sick of being the cash cow for this family. Why is she funding their whole lifestyle? Good on her for putting some boundaries in place. But who knows the truth? We can't ask Abby, unfortunately. Abby did put the property on the market, but by the looks of it, it never actually sold. Now, as you can probably guess, I'm about to get into the master plan behind Abby's murder. This just gets even more into the darkness of this family. Mr. Kwong is really a piece of work. He is pure evil. So he started planning this in the early weeks of February 2023, keeping in mind that Abby did go missing on February 21st of 2023. And he actually enlisted the help of his girlfriend. Yep, he has a mistress. Shocked, I know. Shocked. Now I'm going to call his mistress Choi. She does go by Chi Wing, but I don't want to butcher her name. Not that she deserves any amount of respect from me, but I am going to call her Choi for this case. Choi is a masseuse. She is 48 years old, so she's a little bit younger than her lover boy. And this affair had been going on for 6 months. It's been said that she started missing shifts at her work. She just wouldn't show up. Now, the purpose of her not showing up, it's said to be because she had this rich boyfriend and that he was funding her life and she didn't really need to work anymore. Now, back to this master plan that she was helping him with. And I say help loosely because there isn't much information out there to determine how involved she was with the planning. However, she did help rent 2 properties, and these 2 properties are very important towards the remainder of the case. One place was a very fancy tower apartment, and this was purely rented out to be an escape house for the family to hide out in, essentially. And the other location that was rented out was in a village, and it looks like a little bit of like a rundown motel. And this was the location where the heinous crimes were committed. It was reported by residents that a man in his 60s was seen carrying boxes in and out of his car. He was taking boxes out of a 7-seater van that ironically Abby owned. It's said that he appeared paranoid, always looking over his shoulder, and he was not friendly. On some occasions, it was reported that he was accompanied by a woman in her 60s with short curly hair, which is believed to be Abby's ex-mother-in-law, Jenny Lee. As it turns out, all the items that he was bringing from the car into the motel room was essentially equipment that he was using to set up a kill room. Now we're back to the day that Abby went missing, February 21st, 2023. Anthony, who was her personal driver, was taking Abby to pick up her kids from school, which at the time wasn't out of the norm. It was a task that they did every single day. It was just part of the routine that Abby and Anthony had. And it was a task that they would always do together. I dare say that Abby would have been completely oblivious to what was about to happen. In the final footage of Abby alive, you can see that she's waiting outside at a lobby, waiting for Anthony to pick her up. To me, it looks like she's relaxed, she is on her phone, and she just appears normal to me when looking at that. However, after Anthony picked her up from the hotel, he was driving the normal route that he would take to the kids' school, but then he would abruptly stop halfway. And this is where Alex, her ex-husband, would hop into the car. It is not sure what happened in the car because Alex and Anthony to this day have not provided any context or any information to police. But Abby did have an injury on her skull. So it's believed that something must have happened for her to be struck across the head. I'm not sure if a fight broke out or if she didn't know that it happened and she was struck anyway. We don't know. After being struck across the head, it is said to be the reason for her passing. It was a fatal blow. Fast forward, and it's believed that the car that Anthony was driving was spotted driving into the motel where they were setting up pretty much a slaughterhouse. And it was reported that the brothers, Alex and Anthony, were seen carrying in heavy boxes in and out of the car. Now, with all of this information being investigated and found, along with the footage that the police came across and the lack of help from the Kwon family, police decided to see what was happening at this motel. And they ended up searching the motel 3 days after Abby had been reported missing. On the day of this search, February 24th, 2023, It was discovered that Kwon had rented out this motel for essentially the last 3 weeks and was using it as a DIY morgue. He was disposing Abby's remains. Now picture this. The room has absolutely no furniture. All you see as you walk into this room is every single wall, floor, ceiling is covered in plastic. You see meat grinders, hand saws, pots, storage boxes. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm envisioning an episode of Dexter, and that is exactly what the police walked into. They soon discovered Abby's dismembered legs and feet in the fridge. And in the kitchen, there was something cooking on the stove. There was 2 large pots that the police came across. There was some sort of soup being cooked. There was carrots, turnips, like a minced meat, and it was Abby. She was being boiled into a soup. Police also made note of the solidified fats that were sitting on top of this soup. It's noted that it was very, very thick, very oily. After the police sent this off to the labs for further analysis, it was confirmed that it was Abby. It was confirmed that in this soup was Abby's skull, her ribs, some of her hair, and the minced meat was likely from her thigh. Due to the nature of her body parts in this soup, her body parts were obviously decomposed and they were cooked, so they couldn't do much further testing on them, but it was confirmed to be Abby via dental records. This evidence alone was enough for police to be like, you know what, this was meditated, this was planned out meticulously, guilty. This motel was being used as a literal slaughterhouse to get rid of evidence, along with extensive CCTV footage, and questioning the family and friends of both Abby and Alex and the Kwons. It was undeniable that the Kwons were suspects in Abby's disappearance and murder. Now, eventually, after the police searching this room, it was discovered that her torso and her arms were missing. They weren't anywhere to be found. So essentially, the master plan was for Anthony to pick Abby up, like nothing was wrong, it was just a normal day, picking up the kids, and then he would stop at this halfway point where Alex would get in the car. Something happened in the car for her to be killed. The brothers then took her in the car to the motel where their lovely father was waiting. And he thought that it would be a great idea to dismember her, cook her into the soup, and DNA would be gone. Abby would just disappear, no one would know anything. That was his master plan. Now, it's believed that Alex didn't stick around for too long. He left sometime in the afternoon and he made way to the other hotel where it was pretty much rented out to be a hideaway for the family. And now you can guess why. Anthony actually stayed at the motel and continued to assist with mincing Abby's remains and cooked the woman that he once claimed #sis. The morning after Abby's disappearance, February 22nd, 2023, it is believed that Mr. Kwon drove back to the hotel to assist Anthony with getting rid of clothes, phones, and other evidence into local bins. It's also believed that they took Abby's torso and they placed it in the car and took it to a local cemetery. The police initiated a massive search for Abby's remains. They searched high and low in local dumping areas and the cemetery, but no luck. Her remains are still missing to this day. Anthony and Kwon would have most likely continued to get rid of the evidence as days went by, including the remaining body parts that were yet to be cooked in this soup. But thankfully, they were stopped mid-operation once the motel was being searched by police. Anthony, Kwong, and Jenny Lee were all placed under arrest. However, the police couldn't find Alex. They had no idea where he was. And of course, the family were not cooperating. They also pretty much were like, we don't know where he is. But during further investigation and trying to track Alex down to find out where he is, they did come across some information. Alex had plans of escaping on a speedboat. And luckily, the police had found him just in time as he was about to embark on his grand escape plan, which he apparently spent a lot of time sorting out. As of today, there have been 7 arrests in relation to the brutal killing of Abby Choi. Alex, Abby's ex-husband, was charged with murder. Anthony, who was apparently one of Abby's closest friends, was also charged with murder. Kwong, the master planner of this horrific case, charged with murder. Jenny Lee was not charged with murder, but she was charged with perverting the course of justice. Chi, who was Kwong's mistress, was charged with assisting a murder suspect. And 2 other people who actually assisted Alex with his speedboat getaway plan, Henry Lamb and Irene Yin, both with abetting a murder suspect. Following Abby's murder, the community where this motel was set, Tau Po Lung Mei village, where most of Abby's dismembered body parts were found, also made plans to perform Taoist rituals, I hope I said that correctly, to calm the spirit of the deceased due to the horrific nature of her death. Friends and family were finally able to bid Abby a goodbye some 4 months after her death at a funeral service that was decked out in her favorite color, pink. Mourners dressed up in black lined up outside Po Phuc Memorial Hall in a quiet suburb of Hong Kong, just a dozen miles south of where her remains were found. Chris, Abby's husband, became the primary carer of her 2 children that she shared with Alex, and it's said that he treats them as if they're his, which he did when Abby was still with us. My thoughts go out to this family. This case only just happened in February this year. It's absolutely devastating. I can't imagine how they're feeling with the loss of Abby, but not just that, her poor children. Her poor children, to know that not only her mum is no longer with them, but that their father, their uncle, and their grandparents were involved in making sure that it happened. Making sure that she was murdered. Thank you for watching today's video. It means the absolute world to me. My main goal is to always talk about the victims of these crimes because their names deserve to be talked about. Their names deserve to be kept alive. This case involving Abby Choi was solved and a number of people face the court system. But some cases don't end this way. And I hope that you can join me on this journey of discussing solved, unsolved, and missing cases from across the world. If you do have any cases that you would like me to consider covering, I have my email down below in the description box where you could submit a case via email. I appreciate you. Have a good one and be safe. See you in the next one.